That's beautiful. That's what I'm talking about. Beautiful.
The draft is when every sports team hopes to come out with new talent to turn their franchise around or add to their existing talent. But it's hard picking the right players. Some pan out and some don't. But there are some players that become famous for all the wrong reasons. In this video, we'll take a look at a couple of the players that can lay claim to being the biggest busts in the sport of football as well as basketball, and just what made both of them fail. But first, a simple reminder on how to enter our brand new giveaway. We are giving away either an iPhone X Max, the new iPad mini, or MacBook Pro. It's all your choice. So be sure to leave a like, comment the keyword, subscribe, and turn on notifications to enter the giveaway. It's really that simple. Ryan Leaf, you can't have a video about famous draft busts without mentioning the player that was compared coming out of college against Peyton Manning. It was one of the most intense draft debates of the time, but with hindsight, we all know who turned out to be the successful player. Manning went on to become one of the most successful and well-liked players in the history of the NFL, and Leaf is only famous for his spectacular failure. But hindsight's 2020, and back in the day, the distinction between the two prospects wasn't as clear-cut as it is now. It's easy to dismiss anyone that thought Ryan Leaf was going to be as good as Peyton Manning as being hilariously wrong right now in the present day, but it's just as easy to forget what Leaf did as a college player. Many top quarterbacks come from big-name colleges from the Power 5 conferences. Recent #1 draft pick Joe Burrow, for example, played for the LSU Tigers during his college days. Deshaun Watson played at Clemson, and Tua Tagovailoa played for Alabama. Leaf, on the other hand, played for Washington State. The school is located in the rural part of Washington, unlike their in-state rival, UW, who plays in Seattle. Leaf made the decision to go play QB at Washington State after their head coach Mike Price convinced him that they would play in the Rose Bowl if he did. Even though the Cougars hadn't made the Rose Bowl game since 1931, and yet, despite that poor track record, they were able to pull it off with Leaf at the helm as they made the Rose Bowl in 1998. They did lose the game, but to their credit, the team that beat them was the Michigan team that would be named the champion that year by the AP. He was also one of the finalists in the voting for the Heisman Trophy and only finished behind Charles Woodson and Peyton Manning. That's pretty impressive given the fact that Washington State isn't the biggest school or a traditional football powerhouse like Woodson's Michigan or Manning's Tennessee. Going into the draft, experts seemed to think that it didn't matter much which player went #1 overall because both of them were supposed to be similar level professionals when everything was said and done. The Chargers also looked at Leaf highly enough to make a big trade with Arizona to secure the second pick, which is what allowed them to select him after the Colts picked first and went with Peyton Manning. They gave up their first and second round picks as well as future first-round pick and three-time Pro Bowler Eric Metcalf. Right or wrong, this is really who their scouting team thought was going to last, to the point where they were willing to give up as much as they did to make sure the Cardinals didn't get the player instead. But things went south for the Chargers after actually getting their new pick signed on the team. Leaf would infamously have an attitude problem that started coming out during his rookie season. One of his first actions in the league was skipping the end of the NFL's rookie symposium, which drew negative attention to himself and drew a $10,000 fine in the process. This wasn't the only problem that came for Leaf after his entry into the league, as he also ended up in a public incident where he cursed out San Diego Union Tribune reporter Jay Posner in the locker room before being led away by his teammate, linebacker Junior Seau. Leaf's temper would, of course, become one of his more well-known qualities as his career took a negative turn following the first few games. By the time the season was over, he had truly awful numbers for a quarterback that had been picked so high and had come into the league with such big expectations. Anyone buying into the analysis from experts would believe that Leaf was on his way to becoming a starter for years to come after being taken with the second pick. But in reality, he only threw for 2 touchdowns that season and threw 15 interceptions. His quarterback rating was only 39, a very low mark that came nowhere near the maximum rating of 153.8. Leaf missed his second season with a shoulder injury, but it's safe to say his teammates didn't miss him too much. The 1998 season was described as a nightmare by Harrison, and having to deal with Leaf was a large part of why it was held in that regard by Chargers players. Both Harrison and Junior Seau had complained about Leaf, and the rookie quarterback also picked up a bad reputation for his work ethic. It doesn't make any quarterback more popular to play golf while their teammates are studying. Leaf was eventually released from the Chargers following the 2000 season, and while he did have brief chances with other teams, he never actually managed to become the NFL starter he was projected as originally. With hindsight, it's now easy to say that Peyton Manning is the better of the two players after Manning went on to have a massively successful career that contrasted with Leaf's. But back in the day, when both were just coming out of college, the major differences between the two players just weren't clear enough for the Chargers to dodge a bullet on this pick.
With the first pick in the 2013 NBA Draft, the Cleveland Cavaliers select Anthony Bennett of Toronto, Canada, and the University of Nevada, Las Vegas.
Anthony Bennett.
Anthony Bennett. For a player to really be a shocking draft bust, he has to end up out of the league quickly. There's a big difference between the players that fail to make it in the league and all the ones that don't live up to expectations but still play a long career. Anthony Bennett, the former #1 draft pick of the Cleveland Cavaliers, is definitely in the former camp of players. Bennett serves as an example of what can happen when a team takes pre-draft hype too seriously and makes their pick based on upward trends rather than a solid body of work. Like many of the players in the NBA, Bennett only played a single year of college basketball. He did so at UNLV, where he scored 16 points per game with 8.1 rebounds per game while playing as a power forward. While those aren't the worst numbers in the world, they didn't come against particularly strong competition, with Bennett playing at UNLV, a team from the Mountain West Conference. Few experts actually predicted that Bennett would be the #1 pick. There were other contenders, including Victor Oladipo and Nerlens Noel, and it looks like Noel would have been the first pick if it weren't for some unfortunate circumstances. However, Noel ended up entering the league out of Kentucky coming off an ACL injury, which reduced his draft position and ensured that he wouldn't be drafted until the 6th pick overall. The Cavaliers made the decision to use the first pick instead of trading it back due to not having a solid idea of who deserved the top pick. And in the end, it was the trendy Bennett who received the selection, as the team went for a player that was moving up the draft boards closer to draft day itself, with a decent amount of media hype based on his one college season and his potential as a scoring power forward. But unlike most first draft picks that don't pan out, Bennett never looked like a top pick at all once he entered the league. He rarely flashed his potential and infamously came into the league not scoring a single field goal for the Cavs until the 5th game of his rookie season. Bennett had a hard time adapting to playing against competition that was on the same level and better, and found himself traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves by the time of his 2nd season. Bennett ended up falling as far as playing for the Toronto Raptors G League team after the Timberwolves moved on from him in 2015, and went as far as to buy out his contract to get him off the team quicker. Despite this, Bennett would get a chance with the Raptors, which was somewhat fitting for the first Canadian player to be drafted with the 1st overall pick. Bennett himself is from the Toronto area, so you can see why the Raptors might have thought there was potential in his game. But being back in more familiar surroundings didn't help the former top pick, as Bennett was sent down to the G League affiliate of the franchise, and after his return, the team grew frustrated with his slow adaptation to the league. Despite their efforts to work with him and give him a last chance, things still never worked out between Bennett and his hometown team, and the Raptors became the 2nd team to waive him. Bennett's last stop in the NBA was the Brooklyn Nets, a struggling franchise. If he couldn't make it there, it would be reasonable to assume that he wouldn't make it anywhere within the league. During his time with the Nets, Bennett was once again sent down to the G League, but the time playing with the team's affiliate in Long Island ultimately didn't help him, and the Nets waived him to end his time in the NBA. Some players have made it internationally after failing in the NBA, but that wasn't the case for Bennett, as he was waived by Turkish team Fenerbahce after joining them in 2017. The verdict: at the end of the day, both Ryan Leaf and Anthony Bennett will still end up going down as some of the biggest draft busts in sports history. However, both of them arguably failed for different reasons. Bennett seemingly never had a chance after being selected far above his talent level and coming in with expectations that were impossible to meet for a player that should have been taken later in the 1st round at best. Nothing particularly bad stood out about his conduct during his time in the NBA, but his talent was unable to keep up with the expectations of being a #1 pick. Leaf, on the other hand, had a bad attitude from the beginning, and alienating his teammates only made things tougher for himself and his team, as the results went bad during his rookie season and ultimately quickened his exit from the league, as his attitude became just as famous as his large numbers of interceptions on the field. But at the end of the day, despite the differences, it doesn't look like either one will be forgotten soon, even if it's for the wrong reasons entirely.